in Finland. She was in a previous hangout that we did called Socionics are CF introverted feeling, something like that. So today, Sanna is going to make the case for resembling INFp in MBTI, but also IEI in Socionica. And usually I sort of take the position of, oh, INFp is EII, INFJ is IEI. But Sanna has some good reasoning for why she resembles the two types that she does. So MBTI INFp and Socionics IEI. So we're going to do this by, first of all, we can go through the model here of IEI. So this is the, as you can see, we've got externalities and internalities. And the idea is that for an INFJ resembler, or rather IEI resembler, I'll call that the lyric. So for the, it's named after sort of like the lyric poet. Right. The idea is that they're comfortable overall with all of their introverted functions, and they have quite a large scope of use because it's all within the introverted attitude. And a sort of a better way to explain it is that when somebody is introverted, then their extroverted functions don't come out to play as much. So you can see that, and in fact, we might as well start there. We don't have to start exactly in order. We can actually start with the bottom row for one. So what I'm going to do, so because it's actually probably easier to explain like this, at least with the FE. So you've got the externalities and the internalities. I'll just zoom it in there, and I'll also read it through for those people watching on a mobile device. I won't judge you for not having a proper computer. Right. Maximum energy. And I like the fact here that Victor's got maximum and optimum. And so it's like people can overindulge their two most, Model A would call it the ego row function. So people can tend to overindulge these functions to the exclusion of other ones. So you can see that here at the moment where I'm indulging the TI and the NE. So there, the idea is that when the person is performing their social mission, which is sort of like the role variant in Kersey. So it's like when they're in their introverted mode and they're in their NI mode, it suppresses the FE. And so Victor uses this analogy of the rider horse. So we got there. At close psychological distance, functions included in the bottom row are called internalities, which means that they are aimed at its territory. When working externally, internalization is suppressed and muted via the vertical supervision one-way inhibition. The function, okay, the first suppresses the fifth. So this is one of the things that I can talk to Sanna about, is we can sort of talk about the NI and then the FE as sort of two modes for what she's like. She said in the previous hangout, she sort of intimated or talked a little bit about what she's like with people who are closest to her in terms of psychological distance. So Sanna, let's go through these bullet points. What do you think of NI number 1?
As a romantic approach to life, yeah. I mean, yeah. This is sort of probably like the dream world I prefer to live in.
What is that world like? So, because like people always have trouble understanding NI for people who aren't NI ego types.
It's the opposite of practical, honestly. It's like I get stuck in this introverted waiting mode, and I don't actually get things done.
Is it like, how can I put this? Is daydreaming a species of NI? I mean, or a kind of NI?
Probably, but I mean, depends. What do you mean by daydreaming?
Yeah, this is one of the things, because I frequently hear about this, where the idea that people with NI can sort of like zone out, and go maybe into an altered state where they have because people talk quite a bit about NI has a strong connection with the unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes maybe when they go into a daydream, they're able to access their imagination in that kind of way. But it probably isn't just that. So that's why I said, go on.
NI to me is like it's like a state of mind. It's there is a very distinct subconscious quality to it. It's like flowing. It's like flowing through life. Instead of making things happen,
Yeah.
you just kind of get a sense of where it's going, and when you should act, what you should do, and it's difficult to describe.
There are two concepts in NLP which sort of help to show what NI is like. One of the creators of NLP was pretty much ISTP, and NLP has a massive thing about the unconscious. And so two of the things, and so they wrote quite a bit about hypnosis and Milton Erickson, but the two bits that relate to NI, they sort of had two concepts that relate to the unconscious. One is they talk about the sort of a dichotomy between being in time. So that's like the SE people who are like completely focused on the present context. And then those people who are through time. So it's about they're seeing how things can develop. And so when you're seeing things how can develop, you're not really present in the moment. And then also you can see how, so SPs are usually very good at being present in the moment, but also people can say about them, oh, you're not thinking about the consequences. You're just going for the moment, or near results, like tactical results. They're very good at achieving short-term goals. The NI people are very good at achieving, or not so much achieving. Well, they are if they've got the TE as well. When they've got the NI like vision as to how things are going to change, and then they've got the TE, then they're good at achieving it. I think the NI and the NFJs is more related to bringing about change in other people. So with the INFJ, or sorry, with the IEI, then it's good at bringing about change with an individual person in the counselor role. And then with the mentor, so ENFJs are good at, and I think even Victor calls the ENFJ the mentor. So which is, Kersey would call the role variant of ENFJ. So that's the best social role for the ENFJ to play. Mentor, educator. But getting back, so there's through time, the through time aspect of NI, and then there's also this thing called uptime and downtime. So when somebody is in uptime, they're very much focused on the outside of them. And so again, you can say that about, say, SPs, and especially the SE DOMs. They're focused on the now, and they're very much focused on things outside of them. And you can say that downtime is the unconscious, imagination, dreams, daydreams, everything that comes from within. So, Sanna, are you ticking both of those boxes, through time and downtime?
Well, to go back to what you said before about SPs,
Yeah.
that is supposed to be, I suppose, kind of the opposite. But I wouldn't say that NI is outside time or anything. I would say that NI just lives in multiple different times. You're always tracking trends across time, and usually way more than one trend. Like you're in the middle, kind of looking all over the place.
Right.
Like taking all the trends into account that are somehow pertinent to the situation.
I remember Dario Nardi saying, so folks, if you search for VG number 3 or VGNI, you'll see the Dario Nardi hangout with Victor Galenko. And Dario shows some EEG activity, and he says that region, I think T6 behind the right ear in right-handers is very much associated with as Sanna said there about having various threads and seeing these options going into the future. Dario's saying that the NI types, so that's equivalent of the ego row, dominant or auxiliary, they're very good at seeing multiple strands into the future. And he said that other types, especially the SJs, they can only pretty much see 1 or 2 scenarios going forward into the future. And what you can get with SJs is they do plan a lot into the future, but when the plan goes wrong, they have a tough time adjusting. I recently read the Kersey mastermind profile on the Kersey website, which has been redone. And I read something very interesting about how it said that the mastermind is very good at changing their plans as they go along. And when I read that, that made me think of, oh, that is how NI is different in the NJs compared to the SJs. When the SJs, it's a lot more about rigid planning, and it's a lot more fluid in the NJs. So do you think it's fluid for you, Sanna? How you see things?
Well, yes and no. It's like NI doesn't like to look at multiple different futures. NI wants to focus on the most likely one.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's not like any that likes to jump around. However, I don't think NI has much of a problem with changing, because it's always keeping track of those changes anyway.
Yes.
And it's going to adjust.
Yeah. That is what was in the, what you said there was the sort of thing that was in the Kersey mastermind profile. Now, the mastermind profile very much corresponds to IEI, and it's all got stuff like every idea is subjected to the test of usefulness, all the planning going into the future, like serial contingency planning. Oh, what happens if this happens? Will we do this? And so, and then also in the mastermind profile in Please Understand Me Too, very good book, it talks about how, I know we're going a little bit off topic, but I'm just sort of saying that mastermind is like the IEI. It talks about how they don't show much emotion, but internally they can be closet romantics. And so it's like all the stuff that you see in the IEI profile. And like I said, and then in the Kersey INFJ, the counselor, it talks about guiding people. And so you've got a lot of that in directive. So what we go on.
I don't plan my life the way ILIs do. I have like a general idea. And I know if it's going in the right direction or if it's taking a turn. But it's not detailed. It's more like a general feeling sense type of thing.
I would also think that that the NTJs plan more because they're more object focused and the NFJs are more people focused. So the sort of things that they would like to direct may be more towards their relationships, and the NTJ is more towards achieving objectives, especially in the business sense. So it might not be the case of the NFJs having a weaker planning than the NTJs. It's just they're planning different things. And so,
well, if it comes to TE stuff, then it's pretty weak.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the TE stuff's going to be pretty, because TE is very plan oriented. So, for example, the STJs are very good at planning. It's just that their plans are rigid, and so they can't do the same kind of adjustments as the NTJs. We sort of, so if we go on to the, What about this one, number 2? Trusts her gut feelings.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, I've had some trouble trusting mine because you're not taught in life that you can trust yourself. You're being taught that you have to trust outside authorities, you know. So it took me quite a few years and a lot of experiences where I didn't trust myself, and then I turned out to be right anyway, that I started to actually not question everything. But now I would say, yeah, I do.
Now, how much do you think that is affected by the country that you live in? Because I think you've mentioned before that Finland is quite FI valuing rather than FE valuing, and therefore it might not be as socially constructed as, say, more FE valuing cultures. What I'm sort of saying is the FE valuing cultures might play down someone's individual trust in their gut feelings.
Yeah, but I grew up in Finland, and that's how I ended up anyway. So
right, okay. Yeah, so that's an idea of like all the NFs in cozy temperament theory. All the NFs are cooperative, and so they are group focused, but they're probably the NFs being the catalysts, the enablers. They want to change society and progress it forward. So here's an interesting one. Number 3, strives for positive thinking, brings others' attention to the ways current problems can resolve themselves.
Well, that's an interesting one, because I wouldn't say that I'm not really into positive thinking. I'm more into realistic thinking, or what's most likely. And then if I need to change something, then, you know, find a way to do that. However, I do seem to have a much more optimistic point of view when it comes to, for example, the issues in the world. I believe that we can, you know, fix things that are wrong, and I can't really explain why. And it's completely different from ILIs. We don't really.
They're not really as much focused on other people's problems.
Yeah, I mean, I can focus on problems, but it doesn't really. I'm always focused on the change. Like, how can we fix a problem, and whether we're actually on the path where it's possible to fix them or not. And as long as I feel that it's possible, that it's still possible, I don't really worry. I start worrying when my NI tells me that, okay, we're screwed.
So those things that you're looking at in order to bring about change, are they usually things that involve people?
Well, for me, yeah. For me, I take the view that if I can help individual people, because I'm a very one-on-one person, if I can help individual people, then those people are going to go out into the world and affect others, and they're going to affect others, and so forth. So it's like a chain reaction. I don't seek to affect large groups of people at the same time, but they do always involve people.
Right. So, how about that one, number 4? Knows the right moment to approach a person.
Yes, not just a person. It's more like the right moment to take any kind of action.
Right. Interesting. Could you give us some examples? Sorry to put you on the spot. It's just that when it's NI, I try to make it as concrete as possible because it's such a
it's difficult. I actually don't think that I can necessarily give you an example right now that's very good, because it's I'm always taking small actions to keep myself on the path, whatever that path is, whatever the goal is. So it's not like, sometimes it's a huge thing, but very rarely. Usually it's just a series of small ones. I'm constantly checking if I'm still on the correct track. And if I'm not, then I have to do something. And then I usually get a sense of what I need to do because I know what's wrong.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
Right. So the other Ben is frozen and he's going to drop out in a moment because I just switched my laptop off because I think it was making a little bit of noise. Is it a little bit quieter now, Sanna?
yeah.
Right. And you can sort of see that where how NI and SE works in combination is that you've got the goal, the super objective, or the feeling of how things are going to change with the NI, and then the SE is about taking sort of concrete steps to achieve that goal. So how does it feel for you, Sanna, where you've got the goal there, and then you've got this extroverted sensing that you want to improve? What is that like for you?
Well, if we're still talking about taking the right action, that's usually automatic. Like I don't really think about it. I just know, okay, now's the time to do this. I'm gonna do this, and then I do it, and then I kind of just noticed that I did it afterwards.
Right.
So if I start thinking about it, then I'm probably gonna screw it up because I start doubting.
Yeah. And also in your case, it might be a combination of more TE things that you're trying to achieve, and it's like more because like when it talks about like achieving certain directives on the way to a goal, that is a little bit more of the TE kind of mindset of like achieving these measurable milestones.
Yeah, but I don't plan it. That's the difference. I don't know beforehand the steps that I'm gonna have to take.
Right.
It's very much in the moment.
Yeah. Do you think INTJs know the steps better?
Yeah.
Right. So that's probably coming from TE then.
Yeah.
So what about this one, number 5? Prefers hints and allegories to direct statements.
I actually very much prefer being blunt. However, it's often difficult to convey what I'm trying to convey in that manner because I may not have the words for it. So I think I do both.
Right. So, I've got a little buzz going on. That's not my problem. I don't know why I have a little buzz. Right, I'm going to try to avoid it. Do you hear a buzz?
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening. Oh, no, it's gone. Very strange. Very strange. Have a random little buzz. Right, so this is interesting. The FI working in conjunction with NI. So, yeah, bye-bye, other Ben. Right, so in this really, although I've put FI, this is really R, ethics of relations. So, and this is where we can sort of like get to the crux of a little bit to the crux of the matter of the overall theme when we'll look at later, when we look at like INFp. What do you think about that one there oh yeah, I'll just say something about the creative function. So the creative function basically is like a servant of the lead function, but it's like an invisible servant that the lead function can't really see. It sort of like works in the background. So, but we can sort of question that assumption right now. Do you think you are aware of it, Sanna, or does it just happen naturally? How do you think you use FI and ethics of? So, how do you think you use ethics of relations?
I'm always aware of the results. I'm always aware when the judgment has been made or how I feel about a person, but I don't normally know why. Right. So it's been kind of difficult to trust the judgments because I don't know why I think so. I don't know if I'm deluded, but it does seem to work. So
right. I think that's a good example of creative function FI. And that's.
I should also say that if I focus on like my core or whatever, I feel like it's composed of these two things. I can't really separate them, which is probably why I've had trouble typing myself in the past, because I know that they're both there.
What is your core for you?
Well, it's a feeling. So
Right.
I have a very I have a very solid sense of self.
Right.
It's not fluid at all. And I think my goals are very NI, but if I often achieve or go towards those goals through FI. That's how
Right.
it feels. For example, relationships have been very important for my personal and spiritual growth in the past.
Yeah.
Probably the most important.
Right. Yeah. And that fits with the NFs in Kersey would be the three self-image words are authentic, benevolent, and empathic, or empathetic. And they are very much concerned with the relationships and sort of like mentoring and mediating. So what about that one, number 2? Stays away from rude, unpleasant persons.
Yeah, I call it my, well, can I swear here?
A little bit.
Okay. I call it my bullshit detector.
Yeah.
Because I kind of automatically keep people away that are not pleasant
Yeah.
or useful or helpful or nice or whatever. And I'm not really aware of doing it. I just do it.
So how do you, now given you've said that, how do you see ESTPs? Do you think they're given a bad rap? How you personally, what do you think? What is it that people are missing about them?
I don't really know anyone too well. So it's probably not the I'm probably not the best person to answer
Right.
that. The closest I've got is an LSI, but I don't think I know any SLEs well enough to be able to comfortably answer that.
Right. But it's sort of like when you read the profiles, do you think it's like the idea of their assertiveness?
I do feel like like I'm not afraid of them, you could say. Like I'm not bothered by their assertiveness. I'm not if I read about them, I'm not afraid that they're gonna run over me because I feel like I could um, interact with them in a manner to kind of not be affected by it.
Do you also think that you could guide their energy?
Yes.
Interesting. You said that quickly. Can you talk more about that, or is it just, or is it not something, or is it something that's hard to explain?
It's probably hard to explain. I
Yeah.
don't really, I don't, as I said, I don't really, I haven't had very close interactions with SLEs.
Right. So, how about that number 3, peacemaker?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean,
You said that with regret, almost as if you didn't want to be a peacemaker.
because it's not like it's my goal or anything, but if I look at my behavior, then I think that's what I do.
Right. So number 4, takes advantage of the situation in order to correct the relationship by passing judgment or distancing from destructive people.
I don't really know what taking advantage of the situation means in this context.
Yeah, that's tricky. Maybe it means uses the situation or is aware of the situation or can guide the situation.
Yeah, I have complete faith in my ability to keep the proper distance as long as I don't let myself be guided by external influences.
Right. Ah, yes. Because you have your own sense of self and vision and
Yeah.
targets. Right, so number 5 has acute awareness of conflicts evolving around her, successfully calms down the participants through analyzing the conflict in a sensitive way.
Yes, I'm definitely aware of it. I can calm it down. I wouldn't say that I always do, but if people ask for my help, then I can do it.
Right. Are there some instances where yeah, that's a different issue when we're talking about guiding someone and sort of like pushing them in the right direction. That's sort of out of the context of this because this is about more in a mediator kind of role there. So that's
I can be a mediator. It's not necessarily my #1 priority.
right. Yeah, that's one of the theories in Kersey temperament theory that it's sort of like they can sort of enact the various roles, sort of the NF roles of the two mentor roles, which are the NFJs tend to be more suited to, and the mediator roles, the NFPs are more suited to because it's like they see more options and they're not as focused.
The thing is, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go on.
The thing is that peace is not always what I think should happen. Sometimes the conflict has to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of SE there and NI as like, this is the right answer. The ends justify the means. Sort of like in this case.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not talking about like super destructive situations here, but like, normal interactions with people, conflicts.
And also you can see how that bit there, when the NFJ resembling person is unhealthy, that gets taken to such a large extent and becomes exaggerated and can become quite controlling in order to achieve their goals. And also, so there can be some confusion between, saying you get this a lot with the NFJ, between what the ENFJ wants and what the ENFJ thinks is best for the other person or the group that they're directing. Okay, number 6, can show resentment towards someone but won't hold a grudge.
I would say so, mostly. There are very few people that I hold a grudge towards. I don't hate people. I may think they're idiots, but
Yeah.
I don't really. I would say it's accurate, more or less.
See, so people out there, you can see how these two functions work together. The NI, intuition of time, and the ethics of relations. And you can certainly see that where in their sort of roles there, you've got a little bit of counselor in there and a little bit of mediator kind of role enactment going on. And then we've got, if we go to, right, so the idea, I'll just say a bit of, so you saw there, folks, optimum energy. So it's basically just, the more complex the task, the more energy as it's disposed. It's sort of used when it's have to. And it's sort of like at the disposal of NI. This next one, the social adaptation block. It's like if there's a particular task to achieve and the first two functions don't suit the task, then this is where these two come into play. So we've got the role function here. Now the role function is of the same overall mindset as the lead function, and the overall mindset of I call it mindset to differentiate it from Kersey temperament. The overall mindset is receptive adaptive, so that's the NI and the SI DOMs. Right, so, and that would be, yeah. Right, so this is, they got here, functions at the minimum, so it's just enough to get the task done if it's a simple task. I'll talk more about the launcher function when we get through it, when we get through SI plus. But this can be interesting. I'll get it there. A shadow function in grey. So what do you think about this one? So knows how to dress elegantly with a unique touch.
I think other people would probably say yes. I tend more toward slightly fancier than other people as well.
Oh. In which way?
Like I will dress normally and people think I'm going to a party.
Right. Right. So how about what do you think the motivation is for that? Say for dressing elegantly. I know you said that other people, but what is your thought process there behind outfit choice and things? Because there are certain types. It's like they just don't think about it at all, or think it's irrelevant.
I think it's a way to express myself. I like the way it looks. I think it's pretty.
Right. Okay. That's fair enough. We can talk about in future about Enneagram and like the Enneagram 4 need to like sort of like have an individual and have an individualistic touch, that kind of thing. So are you somebody who likes to have like their own individual style?
Sorry, what did you say?
Do you like to have your own individual style, or keep up with the current trends?
I don't keep up with any trends. I make it up myself.
Right, very good. Right, so Enneagram 4 points. How about that one, number 2? Often complains of poor health or discomfort, but will push herself to do usual routine work no matter how she feels.
Absolutely not. I'm not going to push myself if I'm not feeling good. Right. Like no.
Yeah. So as you've read about comfort sensing in Socionics, do you think you're a little bit stronger at it than as depicted in the profiles, or has that increased in you, or has it always been there?
I think I'm okay, but I also think that both of my parents were SI valuing,
right.
So I kind of grew up with it. It's not something I enjoy doing. It's more like I have to take care of myself to some degree in order to have a decent life. So I'll do it, but I don't really think about it very much.
Right. Right. So part of the theory of Socionics, like coming over, and it's consistent with Model A, where it's like it's seen as a weakness that and a chore, but something that you'd like to improve. Is that how you see it?
I don't feel like I need to necessarily improve it, because I feel like I'm at a level where I can do it fine.
Right.
There are times when I should do it and I don't do it, but that's different. That's because I'm just either lazy or don't feel like it, or there's something better to do.
So,
but yeah.
maybe so we could put it like this. So you think it's something that you have to be vigilant about, to keep an eye on?
Yeah, I think I need to have a little bit of willpower.
Yeah.
To do it.
Yeah. How about that number 3? Brings to our relationships practical care and concern about the other's nutrition, health, and comfort.
I only do that with people that are clearly worse at SI than I am.
Right.
Then I feel like I have to, otherwise they're going to kill themselves.
Right.
But I don't like doing it. I prefer it if they do it themselves or, you know.
Yeah. Right. How about that number 4? Striving for harmony of body and spirit.
I'm not entirely sure what that refers to. Isn't that something everybody wants?
Yeah, I suppose that, say the SE DOMs, they're not really going towards a harmony of body and spirit. They're going towards maybe what's fun or what they can achieve. And
yeah, but is their spirit separate from their physical body and what they're doing?
I think that's sort of phrased in an NF way that other temperaments are not really talking about.
Right.
Where,
well, I tried yoga. I didn't really get into it.
Yeah, yoga's very like not just NF but also IS as well. So you can have like similar behavior. So it's interesting. It'd be interesting to talk to yoga people, to ask them, to see and you probably get people of all types and asking them why they do it. And so, for example, you could even have an ENTJ that does yoga, but as a compensation for all the stress that they've had beforehand. And you'd probably think from the phone, that doesn't make sense. They're SI break. It says, no, if you think about SI break, and think of the break function can be very ironic, where people will do the thing to compensate for it. So, for example, we gave the example of, say, so ESTJ and ESFJ, currently they're NI break, and so they're bad at seeing the development of things, and so they'll compensate for that by planning a lot into the future. But as we said before, it was like rigid plans. So the break function can be quite ironic. So they're just talking about ENTJs, and so it'd be interesting, like different reasons for people performing the same action. What about that one, number 5? Given time can adjust to a wide variety of living conditions.
Probably. I mean, I have my standards, so I don't. I mean, I need indoor plumbing for starters,
yes.
but I think so. I don't have a lot of extra requirements for where I live. I don't need a lot of room except to paint, but probably true.
Yeah, and you get SI points for that. I can ask you about your painting. What do you feel like when you paint them?
It's usually a way to express myself, convey a specific mood or mind state.
Right. Do you feel that with the NI being so hard to define, do you feel that you're almost getting some things out, expressing some NI things through your art?
Oh, definitely. You want to see my art?
I think yes.
It's very nice.
Yes.
I can link it in the Facebook chat.
Right. Yeah, I mentioned before that I'm a big fan of HR Giga because I just think of his ability to show his unconscious, and apparently a lot of his artwork came from his night terrors, and I like the combination of the imagination with the technique.
Yeah. Well, there's my website.
Okay. Should I tell the audience what it's called?
Yeah, sure. It's
right.
not secret.
Right then. So it is Something like Batsilicious.
Yep.
So BATSILICIOUS.com/portfolio/.
Wouldn't it be easier to just type it on the screen?
Probably. I'll try to remember to put it in the video description. Yeah, I'll try to put it in the video description. I mean, unfortunately, the thing doesn't work. Like the sort of banner that can come up at the bottom. I could have written it in there. But yeah, so I'll just talk about the launcher, and then I'll. Right, so social adaptation block. Right, so this one's a little bit tricky. So in Victor's mind, this is a very sensitive function. This is like the hidden agenda in Model A. I almost call it like the people are quite ambitious for this function, just as people are ambitious for the suggestive function or the manipulative function in Model G. And so I tend to call it the eyes are bigger than your belly function. So it's almost as if the IEI resembling people have this sort of like hunger for TI, but then they can very quickly get full of it. So if they get a little bit too much of it, they can get. So is that your experience of it?
I can go into TI mode for long periods of time. The only time when I have too much of it is sometimes when I have a conflict with an LSI. Because they go into this very, very TI. So yeah, that's the only time I've experienced having too much TI.
Now I've just noticed something there, and this is for later on, folks. When it says there, position 4 activates position 1. So there's a thing that Maria has told me about called the beneficiary shift. And this is where the launcher function stimulates the first function. And this is why you get a lot of INFJ people on Facebook going into INTP mode. Because it's like the launcher function, then the dominant function. I've just noticed something there. Position 8 activates position 5. And that's something I've not talked about a lot in the past. So maybe, well, when we get to that, we'll talk about maybe NE that you don't have a lot of energy for, but you'll have lots. The idea is that the IEI resembling person has a lot of ideas and possibilities. It's just they put them to one side because it contradicts the NI. It's just sort of like a background process. And so maybe sometimes it can activate the FE, but we'll get to that in a minute or few. So we're on the TI at the moment. But hopefully, Sanna, you can remind me about maybe how the control function works with the auxiliary function, because I've not really talked about that before, but it is one of these things that I can see in behavior maybe. So they are stimulated. So the Model G is like, this is the most sensitive function. So it's like the TI and the NE, very sensitive functions in the IEI. And it's sort of like they're the starter motor for getting the main functions going, NI and FE. So do you think that sometimes when you encounter a TI thing or a theory, it's sort of a starter motor for you to go into your own NI mode?
Well, yeah, I think they work together. I mean, they have to.
What would be an example for you in your case?
Whenever I'm learning something, analyzing something, any kind of research.
What kind of research?
Well, typology, for example.
Okay. Could you give us an example of a bit of theory that you've read that's caused you to come to a certain realization? So we could sort of say that the realization is coming from an NI place.
Oh, that's super vague.
Yeah, well, sorry, but
I mean, how, okay, how am I supposed to give an example of something that's like a baseline process?
right, okay,
How do I separate the when it's working from when it's not working?
okay. Well, you've answered it like that because it's like it's something that's there a lot. So do you think that you're? Yeah, I think I've already asked this about you going into INTP mode. I think I've already asked that. Yes, I'm not sure. So what about that one? The TI minus #1. In the absence of clear rules, may be disorganized.
I'm very disorganized. If we're talking about life in general, yeah, I'm absolutely disorganized.
Yeah.
I put my webcam high enough so that you can't see it.
However, that would be disorganized maybe when it comes to objects. How about when it comes
with
to
everything? I mean, I can organize data if I really have to.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really bother me. It's not my favorite either. So I'm disorganized in, well, definitely physically, but
how about when it comes to people and like remembering to go to events and work into or maybe something if it's to achieve something for a particular person? Are you more organized when it's personalized?
I will have a vague plan probably, but it's most likely going to change.
Right.
I will adjust.
Right. So, okay. So we've done now this is so another way I would put it for the externalities is that they have a wider scope of use than the internalities. And so with the internalities for introverts, it's almost as if they don't really use their extroverted functions except in more restricted conditions than, say, an extrovert. An extrovert is using their extroverted functions more often than an introvert is. Do you think that's fair to say, Sanna?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I was reading.
Okay. Do you think an extrovert uses their extroverted functions more than an introvert uses their extroverted functions?
Probably.
Yeah. And that's something that Dario wrote in the back of his book, 8 Keys to Self-Leadership. Good book, where he talks about introverts overall report a greater comfort with all of their introverted processes and so he gave an example of that they're basically pretty good or good enough for all of the introverted processes because it's all part of the same mindset. And so, for example, the TI gets you going, gets you thinking, gets you into NI mode. The SI and the NI all part of the same temperament, the Galenko temperament of receptive adaptive, the introverted and little p because it's a receiving function, and then also you've got the creative function that works with the lead function. So you can see, so we've been through them all, and you're pretty good at the FI, the SI, and the TI. And so now when we get on to the extroverted functions, so Victor, being very much a Jungian, is massive on introversion, extroversion. Self-affirmation block, individual desires, this block dominates at close range territory. So for me, this is as an INTP resembler, TINX resembler, I pretty much only show FE at close psychological distance or when I'm talking about something that I'm interested in. So now we can get to FE plus. I'll just flip. There we go. I should have had Elmas square all along. So FE #1, friendly disposition, charming, keeps smiling in spite of internal anxiety.
I'm probably friendly, yeah. I don't know about charming. You would need to ask other people. Who's gonna call themselves charming? Seriously.
Yeah. In fact,
Keeps
somebody who does probably isn't.
yeah. And I do not keep smiling in spite of internal anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at hiding at all. So
Yeah,
if I
that might be something that varies by culture. That kind of, and yeah, that might be something that's cultural or varies by Enneagram.
yeah, I actually think culture does play a part in it.
Yeah.
I also think it's fake if you hide your actual feelings. So
Yeah, and so out of those three words, for the self-image words of NF resembling people, you've got authentic, benevolent, and empathic. Which is the most important for you out of those three?
probably authentic,
Yeah.
because everything starts from it. If you're not being true to yourself, then you just nothing else is gonna line up.
Right. So, and getting on to something we'll get on towards later on. That focus on authenticity, which will line up with a strong 4 in your tri-type, that might be the thing that correlates to the way MBTI sees FI. There's this thing about personal values.
It is, yeah. I thought we were gonna discuss that. So
Yeah. Yep. So, so this one, number 2, good at comforting others, cheering up, and making them laugh.
I do not comfort others if that means trying to make them feel better in the moment, because I have a long-term view, so I can help them see what the problems are and how they can resolve it. But to me, comforting them too much in the moment is just going to keep them from doing the work for long-term benefit.
Would you say you're somebody who is more of a... If we just split it down to 2 kinds of subtypes, there are other kinds of subtypes, but like you've got the FE subtype and the NI subtype of IEI. Would you say you're more the NI subtype?
Well, if I have a subtype, yeah, probably.
Right.
But I don't know if I have. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. You could also be more like the TI subtype.
Well, I'm not as good at TI as the rest.
Yeah, and it's also it's what fits in with the overall temperament. So it's still going to be a TI that's related to the things that are usually associated with the NF interests. So, like I say, a lot of INFJs get into typology because it enables them to have that combination of a structure, and especially Enneagram, a structure, and things to do with the humanities and how people work. So you get that good combination there.
Yeah, I can see that.
I would say you have a good sense of humor. What about that number 3? Has a keen sense of humor.
That's like charming. How am I? Why am I supposed to? Am I supposed to compliment myself?
No,
yes,
okay.
I have a great sense of humor.
Well, I say you're funny enough. You've made some good comments, like the one about not lowering the camera. You get a tick for that at least. Can be dramatic, but not in a provocative way.
What's dramatic in this case?
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot.
Yeah, well,
that's okay. I suppose that might be more like ENFJ or ESFJ when they get upset and they're trying to like spur people on with emotional pressure.
Okay, so it's emotionally dramatic.
Yeah, because actually this block here, this is the same as the social mission block of ESFJ, of ESE, where you've got FE plus and SE minus. And Victor says that when those two work together, he described it as emotional pressure. It's like,
Okay.
so that's probably why he put that proviso in there. Can be dramatic, but not in a provocative way. So maybe if ESFJs can, under certain circumstances, be quite directive with people, especially that they want their family or they feel that have let them down. What about in your case, you can maybe split that into art, because it's still so lyric poetry is their most natural and convincing way of artistic expression.
I don't know what lyric poetry is like. I don't generally like poetry at all, so.
Right. So I think we've asked a little bit about your art. We've sort of gone over that before about using it to express things that are maybe related to NI, and we've sort of related that a little bit to the Enneagram Type 4. So I think we've covered that. So yeah, demonstrative. Oh yes, there was a thing in Jung where when you actually, and I talk about this more, folks. You want to know about this in depth? For the first hour, I talk about what is the true auxiliary function in Jung. And if you see the FI hangout in the INFp series, Carl Jung, when he talks about the auxiliary function, he actually describes the auxiliary function in a way that covers both the demonstrative function and the creative function.
Okay.
So I will give you some examples. Now, when he talks about the lead function, he's very, very specific. So, for example, practical intellect, for instance, paired with sensation. So when you hear practical intellect, you think, okay, TE. And then it says sensation. Doesn't say introverted sensation, just sensation. And Wikisocion actually says that Jung said there's two kinds of auxiliary function. Well, I'm not really seeing that in this, but the way it's open for both. And then we've got here speculative intellect. So that's TI DOMs. Speculative, well, actually, it's more the TI DOMs in LII. Speculative intellect breaking through with intuition. Not extroverted intuition, just intuition. And then here's another one. The artistic intuition, which selects and presents its images by means of feeling judgment.
Artistic intuition?
Yeah, I think that's like in the NI DOMs, and maybe maybe. So, for instance, maybe NIFX or NEFX. Artistic intuition, because what it does, he contrasts that with philosophical intuition, and I think he's talking about IEI there, because the way he describes it is he then there's another bit in the book where he relates it to Friedrich Nietzsche, and the way he describes Nietzsche, it's pretty much like INTJ, if you're going to use the MBTI letters. But what it puts here is, it doesn't say presents its images by way of a feeling judgment. It just says feeling judgment. It's want to cover both bases, like the FE and the FI. And so here's the second one. The philosophical intuition, which, in league with a vigorous intellect, translates its vision into the sphere of comprehensible thought. So it doesn't say practical thinking the way it did earlier on. Because if Carl Jung was really pinned down on the auxiliary function, he would have said the philosophical intuition in league with practical thinking. You know, if you were just going at NITE, you'd say that. So he sort of like left it open for both that. So that's a little digression there, folks. Now we're on to the manipulative function. Okay, what's happened? Okay, there you are. Right, okay, that's your link. Right, I had a notification. Right, so what about this one? This is where you can probably come into your own. as like at least some solid proof for resembling IEI. What about that one? Number 1, has respect for strong and determined people.
Yeah. I mean, respect. Yeah. I mean, just I don't necessarily respect them just because they're strong and determined, but it's a quality that I.
Right. So you at least respect the quality that they show, if not the whole person.
I want a person that I think it's a quality that I like to see in somebody.
Could you give us, are there some names of certain historical figures or celebrities that people can relate to? Who you
I
think?
don't really have any that I can think of, and I definitely don't know their types.
Right. Oh, but maybe just somebody who exemplifies the kind of strength that you admire, even if you don't know their SLA, but somebody who shows the kind of quality that you admire.
My mind just goes blank when you hear that.
Fair enough.
I don't.
Yeah, fair enough. So maybe there's nobody who lives up to your ideal of the of the extroverted sensei.
In order for me to be drawn to someone, they have to also have high ethics.
Right.
If they are nasty people, then they're just gonna. I'm not gonna like them just because they're strong and determined.
Right. I'm going to put that in the memory bank for INFp. So people should take that lesson. They're not just attracted to any old kind of SLA. It has to be an SLA with ethics, and that's going to be a rare commodity. But
yeah,
you
have to be a good person otherwise as well.
Yeah, so a well-developed ESTP resembling person. Right. Number 2, tries to discourage others from getting unglued or looking for someone to blame.
What's that supposed to mean?
What, the unglued bit? Yeah. When somebody is unglued, it's sort of used when somebody falls to bits and it's like they lose their control. They're sort of saying, "Oh, you're becoming unglued."
Oh.
It's almost like coming apart at the seams.
Yeah.
So
okay.
A little bit like that, I suppose.
Would this be connected to the counselor role?
I suppose it's more because it's in the kind of role of mentoring people and guiding people.
Because I do find that people come to me asking for help, and for a period, I have to kind of hold them up.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we've got there, as you said, you've gone forward a little bit onto number 3, responsive to calls for help. What about that number 4? May show unexpected courage under pressure.
I think I'm surprisingly effective in an emergency. At least if it's a kind of emergency where I know what to do.
Right, so you can see there about this idea of scope of use and on its territory. So unexpected courage under pressure, whereas for somebody with extroverted sensing in the externalities row, then it's got a wider scope of application, a wider scope of use, and particularly with the SE dominant types, where they can use their extroverted sensing in a wider number of cases, rather than it just being specific circumstances, the way it's sort of defined in this box. Right, number 5, when driven by strong emotions, becomes single-minded and pushy.
I can definitely get pushy when I'm trying to help people. For sure.
So you can see how, and you already know this, about how the NI and the SE are working in tandem. So, and especially the NI when it's with the NFJs and it's related to enabling people, bringing out change in people. And so you've got the NI, which sees how this person, what goal they need to go towards, how they can develop, and then the SE, which is like applying a little bit of pressure to like sort of guide the person in that direction of where you think is best for them to go.
Yeah, I'm relentless.
Good in the counselor role. Then we got the inflation avoidance block. And Victor used this metaphor. And it's probably not because he's an Austrian. It's probably because he lived through very high inflation due to increasing the money supply. Overvoltage on this block leads to collapse of the mind, just as monetary inflation leads to collapse of the economy. Yeah, debt monetization, that's increasing the money supply. And then using the money that that's been created to buy government bonds. And then the government spends that money into circulation. And because that increases demand, it raises prices. So yeah, the break function is same as the vulnerable, same as place of least resistance, equates to the trickster function in model B. So how about this one, Sanna? For T plus number 1, not frugal, sometimes spends on a whim and is left with no money for necessities.
Not true. I'm extremely frugal.
Very good.
I'm not good at making money, though. I'm just very good at holding on to the money I've got.
Right. Has that always been the case with you?
Yeah.
Right.
That's also something that I was raised as. Right.
Yes, that's something that happened with somebody before in World Socionics Society. This was somebody who was an IEI resembler, who I believe is an IEI resembler, and they categorized her as IEE as INFp because she talked about these kind of TE things, and they made it look like, oh, she's a natural TE valuer. But it wasn't because of that at all. It's because she grew up in a family where there wasn't a lot of money. And so she learned to be vigilant about those kind of things.
Yeah, I was just raised to not waste money. It wasn't because we didn't have any. It was just that, you know, you don't need stuff that you don't need. Yeah. So don't waste it.
Yep. So number 2, while working, the associative train of thought frequently leads her away, so it's hard to stay on task.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what kind of working this refers to, but unless I'm really into what I'm doing, then I definitely get distracted all the time.
Yeah, it's probably more the stuff that's like having to do with going through various steps, something that's quite very object focused and achieving particular tasks.
Yeah, I think I'm better at following steps, but I'm not necessarily very eager to create them.
Yeah, yeah.
To plan that way, but if somebody gives me a piece of paper with steps, I can definitely follow that.
Yeah. Yes, it's more a case of like the energy for it, the enthusiasm for doing this, and that intellectually knowing what to do, but it just being a drain.
Yeah, I don't think it takes any energy to follow it.
Yeah. Well, how about if it was something that was like a long process, and if you had to do it day after day?
I would probably get bored.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. So number 3, tries to make the most of the resources that fall into her hands, though any entrepreneurial activity involving risks tends to exhaust her quickly.
Well, this is like the opposite of 1. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't take risks normally.
Yeah.
It has to have a very good reason.
I like how they put there in the one, it puts that little caveat, sometimes spends money on a
Yeah.
loan. Tries to make the most of resources that fall into their hands. Right, okay, that makes sense. Oh yes, that's something else that Victor has with the NI and SI DOMs, is they don't have a lot of energy, but and I've talked to Haley about this, ILI and ITX Resembler, where they don't have a lot of energy either, but they tend to spend it very productively. So when somebody sees the results that an ILI resembling person can achieve, they go, wow, they must have a lot of energy to achieve that. No, they just spend that energy really well on productive goals. And then when they're not doing that, they'll go back to NI mode. They just get stuck in their heads.
Well,
Here on.
That's arguing that NI isn't productive, but that's the preparation phase.
Yeah.
That's when you figure things out.
Yeah, it's all of the research that's necessary in order to get there.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that it's not productive.
Well,
it's required.
It's research and development. It's like the research and development phase when you're like doing a project, and then so you're doing all the research. Say you're building an aircraft, you might do all the research and the designing for about 10 years, and then it might take you about 6 months to build the actual aeroplane. But in INTJ, it's like they're thinking it all through. They're going through all the possibilities. They're planning everything, and then they sort of go on to the next, because they're always very good at sequencing, the NTJs. So it's like they'll go through all the permutations, and then how things can go wrong. Once they think, okay, this is going to work, then they enact it quickly. So it's very efficient, and I suppose it's very stage by stage, rather than those people that don't think things through and then go headlong into it, and then they can have problems and may have to go back to square one. Does that make more? Is that giving them a little bit more respect? The way I said there with the NI, it's like all the thinking things through.
Yeah.
Even if it's maybe at an unconscious level. Say when you. So have you ever had that thing where, when you've had a good night's sleep, or just after any sleep, where you've come to new realizations about things? You maybe think that's the NI at work, or.
I think any kind of relaxation actually has that effect. It doesn't necessarily just sleep.
Right.
I mean, that's why people have insights in the shower.
Yeah. So when you relax, does it enable you to go outside of your body? Does it calm your mind? What is relaxation like for you?
Well, are we talking about physical or mental?
Well, sort of both. What is it? Is it a state where you can relax your mind, where it becomes clear?
I don't know if my mind is ever relaxed. It's not really. I mean, there are times when I'm not consciously doing anything, but I'm always aware that there is the unconscious part working on something.
Is it a case where you're relaxed when you've not got these external things sort of impinging upon you, and then it allows you your natural thoughts and realizations to bubble forth from your unconscious, and then think about those? And that's relaxing for you, rather than having to deal with external considerations?
I think my normal state is probably this sort of state of aware relaxation. Right. Like I'm not. It doesn't feel like it's draining me in any way, but I'm not necessarily actively directing it. And that's probably the best time for the insights to actually appear.
Right. Yeah, so it's like that thing, is like the harder you look for it, the harder it is to find, because you need to have a clear mind.
Yeah, if I'm stressed, then it's going to have a huge effect on this.
Yeah, and that's sort of an example of a thing where It's almost like that time I mentioned before, like uptime and downtime. If you're stressed about things that are external to yourself, it's like making you preoccupied with things that you don't want to be occupied with. You want to be able to go into yourself. And because NI is the most inner directed function, the most introverted function, as it were, you have to sort of, so do you like to block the world out as much as is practically possible?
Yes.
Right.
I also like to occupy my mind with stuff. Like I will play computer games a lot just to kind of not think.
Yeah. Ah. And whilst you do that, whilst you're engaging the extroverted sensing that uses a different part of your brain, do you sometimes have things pop into your mind that's like more of an NI thing, or realizations about something completely different, or do you just like to go into the SE mode of
Usually it doesn't happen during that time, but it does have an effect on my overall well-being because it's fun.
Right.
And I like doing it.
I've noticed this with a lot of NI DOMs. Like Dario, I think he's written a book about computer games. And Jonathan, I've just noticed that the NI DOMs do like to get their SE on in playing relaxed by playing a computer game. The number of times I've seen on Facebook, Jonathan is playing Angry Birds.
Well, I'm also quite competitive. I'm competitive in a hidden sort of way. Like I don't necessarily voice it, but I'm definitely competitive. So if I'm losing, then it might have the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Just end up feeling worse. But generally, I like it.
Right. So this is now we're going to, and now I've remembered that thing, and I've not really talked about this before, where I've talked about the launcher function, because I actually forgot that the control function actually stimulates the demonstrative function. So position 8 stimulates position 5. So this is the idea that the IEI resembling person has a lot of information for TI stuff and NE stuff. So do you think you have a lot of... So when you hear people talking about NE, and then you say, oh, that person, all that's so NE, is that to you like, yeah, I know that, I think about that, I have those thoughts all the while, it's just I don't really care about it that much? What's your sort of attitude towards NE?
I think NE is, for me, it's very unconscious. If I had to consciously engage it, I don't want to. It's boring. Like I just, it's like no, I'm just gonna go do something else. But it's always there if I need it.
So how do you define NE? What is NE for you?
I suppose to me it's focusing on ideas that are not the one single path that I want to focus on.
Right.
All kinds of tangents.
Yeah. So it's almost like when you see people such as me or other NPs talking about these possibilities, it's like, oh, you're just sort of doing some intellectual self-flagellation.
No, I get bored, and if it goes on for long enough, I'll zone out.
Yeah, you go into NI mode.
I just kind of, I mean, I can usually follow it just fine if it's sort of limited, but if it goes on for 10 minutes, then it's just...
So the name, the Model A name of ignoring function is very apt for you. Right. So
also, if I'm okay, there are situations where my current path isn't working and I need ideas, I need a new direction.
Yeah.
Then I think it's kind of automatically engaged.
Right.
The difference between you and me is probably that once I get that one good idea, I'll stop using NE.
Right. Right.
And I just need one.
Do you ever think you use the, because theoretically, like the 8 would launch the 5. Do you think sometimes you use NE to help you with some FE situations, maybe as an angle to like help you when interacting with somebody.
Yeah.
Oh, could you give me an example of that? Because I just thought of that now because I forgot to think about the 8 with the 5.
Well, for example, if my approach just with someone I'm trying to help isn't working,
Yeah.
then I'm gonna try and come up with a different angle.
Right.
And I will do that until I find one that works.
Right. Okay. That's good. So that would be a shift where, so if it's going 8-5, that would be sort of switch into a mode which is a little bit like acting like an INFp, where, because their social mission block is any FE. So just in that instance, you're going any, then FE. A little bit like, I need to think about what that is for me. Then I can think about what. Oh, yeah, that would be like extinguishment. I don't know if that's a shift. Yeah, I don't think there's an extinguishment shift. I know there's a mirage shift. There'll be TENE. Right. Okay. What have we got here? Okay, so number 1. Oh yeah, it's paired with number 3. So this is the idea that in your duel, you can supply ideas, or maybe it's just things like subtly in the background, not really aware of it, where you can guide their role function. And the same thing would be with them, with their SI. But your SI is pretty well developed anyway. So the idea was that their information for it would guide it. That might be something that's more within the realm of the model than a thing in real life. I've not really seen that. I would have to observe a dualized couple. So what about number 1? Curious, has a soft spot for new and unusual things.
Shinies?
Yeah. What are the new and unusual things that you like?
Well, I think I'm generally curious about a lot of things. About new and unusual things.
Could you give us an example of the sort of things that are interesting to you? Because it makes it more concrete.
Well,
yeah, I was just about to say
science stuff.
Right. What kind of science things interest you?
Basically anything to do with space.
Ooh. Yeah, and I would say this is an example of where the the IEI can act a little bit like an INTP, go into that INTP mode of, because these two functions, you do have a lot of information for, the TI and the NE, but it's sort of, there's a limited amount of energy.
Yeah, I'm probably not very thorough. I'll just look things up and then I'll move on to do something else. I don't think I will spend a lot of time on it. But it does keep happening, and I will learn small bits here and there.
So are you the sort of person who would watch something like Minute Physics, where it's like the short videos on physics?
Yeah.
Right. I need to watch that channel. I'm subscribed to it, and I have it open as a tab, but I need to watch it.
What was the channel?
Minute Physics.
Yeah, I don't really know that one, but I watched other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's not entirely accurate, and their videos are over a minute, but they usually have short videos, and I think that's the right length for that particular kind of subject.
Well, actually, when it comes to that stuff, I will happily watch long ones as well. It's just that I don't do it every day.
Yeah, yeah, because you don't INTJ and INTP is not your best fit type. If you were doing that all the while, you'd probably be an NT.
Yeah.
Because if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck. Here we go. This is interesting. Number 2, will easily see through attempts to hide or fake something.
I would say yes, but what's the context? What kind of things?
Yeah, and plus also you might not know about those instances where you
that too. I was thinking that actually, but considering how often I feel that way, I would say that at least some of the time I'm doing it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because if somebody is, if they relate to the NF characteristics, then they're going to be related a lot to thinking about people, their own motivations, other people's motivations, and so they're going to be very attuned to looking at those sort of things, especially people's motivations. Are you very much like that, Sanna, where you are focused on someone's motivations?
Yes, I think it's often it's quite obvious, and I don't know why they even try to fake it or hide it.
Yeah. And there's one thing that Dario mentioned, and I wasn't able to phrase it right, and he phrased it perfectly, that certain people who are into typology, who are saying not NFs, might be atypical of their type. You know, to be like so interested in like someone's personality. So if you've got like an ESTJ that's really into typology, then it's like they're probably atypical of their type.
Well, I think typology or any personality system is going to help anybody deal with other people. So I think that's where most of the interest comes from.
Although there are some people, especially you get some people in the Socionics community who can become blinkered by the functions. And it's almost as if, it's almost like that Buddhist thing of the veil of Maya, where you see things through stuff that you already know, that you can't accept new information, doesn't fit your previous constructs. So maybe somebody who becomes, say, too much focused on one typology, they tend to just select information that fits that system. And so they can ignore things that are very important.
Yeah.
So this is why it's good, folks, to like know lots of systems, like Enneagram, Socionics, Kersey, but then also to notice those things where people differ from a type pattern.
Yeah. I would say that you should never use any typology system as an excuse. And I've actually been accused of being too rigid when it comes to Socionics because I demand accuracy in a sense. Like if we're talking about Model A, I don't want to mix in MBTI, and I pissed some people off with that.
And I'm one of those people. I mean, I used to be very much a compatibilist, and then I was looking for Victor's and I think more, say, the Model A, like say Model A ESI. It mentions like in the Model A ESI in about 2013 on Wikisocion, back when it was wikisocion.org rather than .net, and it mentioned like impulsive 5 or 6 times. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is pretty similar to ISFP. But when you read Victor's ESI profile, this is a type that does not want to take any risks. And he calls it the Guardian. And it's like a hardcore version of an ISFJ. It's like a type unto itself. And I have seen some people in reality who are like the ESI. And it's like, it's definitely a type. It's definitely something that exists, and they're like that moral guardian that's very like somebody like Mary Whitehouse. Mary Whitehouse was a campaigner against things on television that she didn't agree with, and she was the leader of the National Viewers and Listeners Association, and so she was against like too much sex and violence on television. It was like this moral crusader and coming down with her views on things. It was like a lot of introverted feeling, but with a lot of force behind it, with these moral judgments on people. So quite different from ISFP and ISFJ. So that's why when I did the Model G of that type, I kept all of the functions in the Galenko codes, like E and R and L and T.
I prefer to do that always.
It's just that I tend to do it like this when, if it's roughly equivalent, in order to help people, it's like I said before, if they already have their framework, if they already have MBTI, then I want to show them things where, okay, this is pretty close to this profile, and these are the new things that you can learn from Socionics, say about the shadow functions.
Yeah.
You'll learn about
the problem is that then people do what I did in the beginning, which is assume that they're exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I always try to bring up and I will in future, and I always bring up the sensory introvert profiles don't match. I mean, Victor's SEI profile is about an 85% match because he has that TI plus, which is very like follow the rules and stuff, which is a bit SJ-ish, and so overall, but there's little bits in there that don't match. And there's certain things in the extroverted sensor profiles, and I've been through SEE with Jeff, who is MBTI and Kersey ESFP performer, and Victor's one is roughly equivalent because it's like the politician. And there's things in the Kersey profile of ESFP where you see the creative extroverted feeling, and it's about things like being charismatic, raising other people's mood. So it's like it's strong, but it's not valued. So where have we got to in here? Number 3, frequently oscillates between humble and inflated view of her capabilities and talents.
I'd probably do that. I don't know what it has to do with any though.
Maybe it's this idea of frequently in Model A, they'll talk about NE as the perception of potential.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that makes sense.
So maybe the idea is here that they can confuse potential with ability and a capability of achieving something.
Yeah, I would say that's a failed attempt to NE though. Because if you're using it properly, then you're gonna know.
Yeah.
If you are able to remain objective.
Yeah, well, that's one of these things. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, but maybe they have this thing where, I have that capability, I just can't be bothered. So that's why they have that inflated view of it. But then the reason why they'll oscillate is they'll go, yeah, but I've really not achieved it. Yeah, but I've got all this ability, but I've not achieved it. So that's sort of, you see what I mean? Like alternating between the thing that they think they're really good at and then not actually doing that thing, and they'll beat themselves up a little bit for not doing it, because part of them will say, well, if you're also talented, why haven't you done that thing then?
Yeah, I think when I question myself is when I fail to achieve, which is a lot.
Number 4, while pushing those close to her to take risks and explore, typically will not lead by example.
Yeah, I'm not the one to take risks. I'm definitely not going to be that one. I don't know if I push others either. It depends on the issue. If it's something that has to do with their personal growth, then yes. But something in the external world, probably not.
Right. So, Sanna, we've gone through this IEI profile.
Yep.
Do we think we should talk about the INFp in a separate video?
That's up to you.
It depends how much you've got to say on. Okay, but
honestly, okay, let me say this: we haven't really addressed any of those reasons why I'm different types and different systems. Like we only went through the why I resonate with IEI.
Yeah.
But in order to go to the actual reasons and the analysis that I did to get there, we have to cover INFp as well in MBTI and then compare them. Yeah.
I think we might do that because I can like set up another video, because this will enable people to look at this one as a block, and then the next one we can go over INFp. And it makes it easier to title it as well. So overall, what do you think of this profile and how you relate to it?
For the most part, I relate to it. There are some parts where I really, really don't, but there's only a few of them. Like the being frugal part or the comforting people part.
Yeah. Maybe there's a little bit of overlap between SI and TE for the IEI, and maybe because your SI is developed above average, that a lot of the TE things for you where there's an overlap with SI, because you're not like the NTJ is trying to conquer the world. It's your TE things that are more maybe TE steps in order to achieve SI things. But because your SI is quite strong, then maybe your NE is not as weak. Sorry, your TE is not as weak as, say, the profile is.
I don't know. I feel like it's pretty weak. Like I struggle with TE things at the moment because I'm trying to get my career situation sorted, and I definitely feel that I'm not very good at it. I have to do it, obviously, but
I think there's a little bit. Sometimes there's a little bit of overlap between SI and TE in terms of SI being like doing those things that are related to your body and your health, and maybe there's a little bit of housework in there, and so it's like that could be a little bit covered with the TE, but it's like if you got the SI thing covered, then it's like at least in your home environment you've got all of those things organized, and so then when you look at the bits that say oh frugal overspends, it's like not so much me. So it's like just a little bit of overlap. There's even more of an overlap between SI and TE when it comes to MBTI.
Mm-hmm.
Right then, so it depends. Yeah, I can send you a link for another Hangout where I can say, see this video for how Sanna matches II. Now we're going to talk about how she matches MBTI INFp.
Okay.
Right, okay, so what I'll do is I'll stop this